In this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can start to combine different maps, bitmaps and procedural maps, together in a single material. So let's say that we have something like the tiles on these pipes, and we also want to combine that with maybe a gradient that gives us a look of shadowing on both ends. So to combine those, let's go ahead and first get that material. So here's the pipes material that we're looking at. And right now we just have the tiles piped into the diffuse color. We'd like to also add a gradient into the diffuse color. Let's go ahead and break this wire. So the tiles are still right here. We haven't lost those. We've just broken the connection. So I've just selected that and deleted it. Let's go ahead and add a gradient ramp to the mix, and let's add that into the diffuse color. Okay, let's make sure that we show that. Now we'll change our gradient so that it's going from one side of the pipes to the other. So we'll change that to VW. All right. And let's go ahead and modify this so that we get something dark on both ends. And then we get lighter areas in the center. All right. So maybe something like this, and we can maybe lighten this up even a little bit more in the middle. Okay, so let's say that we've got our gradient the way that we want. How do we now combine this with the tiles that we had earlier? Okay, what we can do, instead of having either or, we can actually combine these together using a composite map. So let's go ahead and delete this wire here, and let's drag a composite in between. So double clicking on this, you can see that we have a single layer within this composite map. Under composite layers, we've got layer 1. So this is where we're going to pipe in one of our materials, or one of our maps. So we'll take the tiles and let's go ahead and pipe this into layer 1. So now you can see that that map's been associated with this. We can color correct it, we can duplicate it. There are blend modes here that we'll look at in a minute, as well as the opacity. So to add a new layer, which is what we want to do to be able to combine these two together, let's go ahead and click this little button, add new layer right here. So we'll add a new layer, okay, and now the new layer is going to be above the tiles. You can see that here. We can move that around if we want to, but we'll just leave it how it is. Let's grab the gradient and we'll pipe this into, in this case, layer 2, which is really going to be this layer up here. So let's go ahead and view the material after we go ahead and take the output of the composite back into the diffuse. Okay, so now we've effectively put this composite map in between both of these maps before it gets to the diffuse. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and take a look at that. Now I'd like to actually blend the gradient over the tiles. Right now we're just seeing the gradient. So let's take that gradient and we'll use a blend mode of multiply. Okay, so multiplying that over the tiles themselves. Okay. And now, let's go ahead and just do a quick render of this. See what that looks like. So now we're getting the tiles, but we're also getting the gradient on both sides of that. Okay. Let's say we want to do the same thing with the engine interior, the engine piece here. So let's grab this engine, and I'm just going to isolate it so we can sort of see it a little bit better. And let's go ahead and grab that material. I'm going to just pull it off here. Okay. I'll lay out the children so that we can see that. I'm going to kind of hide the tree right there. So we've got noise piped into the specular. We've got this gradient piped into the color. So let's add a tile map here. And we want to also add it into the color. So I'll just delete that wire, pipe this into the color. We will show our maps in the viewport. Okay, so now we see our tiles. So we'll modify our tiles a bit. We can change the stacking. I don't want to have too many tiles actually on this one. So maybe make something like that. Let's change the gap so that the lines are a bit smaller. All right. And we'll take the grout, make that a darker color. Okay. We can, on the texture, we can make this a kind of a little bit of a gray with maybe a little bit of blue in there, something like that. Maybe give us a little bit of variance on the color. Okay, if we want to kind of render that up and just see what that's actually going to look like, we can do that. So maybe we get something that looks more like that. We can also add that to the bump channel. So just holding that color up there, we can now duplicate this tile down, pipe it into the bump. Okay. We'll come in here and let's just take a look at what that looks like. Okay, so we've now added some bump to that. So let's now combine it with the gradient that we had previous. So again, all we're going to do is delete the wire. So we've got these two, which we need to pipe and combine into the diffuse. So we'll add a composite between right in here. We'll add a new layer. Okay, and now we can start to pipe these in. So we can pipe the tiles in and the gradient in. Let's say we want the gradient to be on top. We can go ahead and just drag that up. Okay. And you can see that it's actually made a new copy of that. So now we'll just choose multiply and multiply that over the tile pattern. Let's see what that looks like. So it's not really working the way that we want, so let me make sure that we've got everything. One important thing that we have not done is to actually repipe that back into our material. That would help a great deal if we did that. So make sure that you assign that and apply it appropriately. And so now you can see that the tile has been layered with the gradient. So that if we exit isolation mode, kind of back up a little bit, can sort of see the result here if we render this up. And you can lighten things up by changing the color of the tiles if you want to lighten those tiles up. But we get that bump, and then we also get the gradient combined with that as well. Okay, so if we kind of pull this out, let me hide, kind of do some house cleaning here. So we've got tiles going into the bump. We've got the noise going into the spec, and then we've got two different maps going in to drive the diffuse color. Okay, and so we can take the gradient. If we want to take that the colors in that gradient, we can always go in and modify these, lighten them up maybe a little bit. Maybe take some of that. Maybe take some of that color up, because we're multiplying it over, so it's going to affect the colors on what's underneath it. So if we want to maybe lighten that up a little bit, we can do that. Kind of render that up, and so you can see we've modified it a little bit. So the composite is really going to allow you to combine a lot of different materials in here, and you don't have to just have two. You can have multiple maps that you're adding. Let's go ahead and let's look at the fan blades themselves. If we just isolate those, let me just actually grab those. So we've got a little bit of variation here on the color. Again, we can combine these using a composite. So we'll bring that composite in. We want to stick it right between here, which is the noise, and we want to add a gradient ramp. Okay, so let's dial these in. We'll add a new layer. Drop these two in. All right, we've got the gradient ramp up on the top, so we'll choose to multiply that. Actually, let's go ahead and just wait on that. I want to modify the gradient here, and let's make sure that we reapply that. And so I want to modify the gradient. So I will go into the gradient and edit that. Okay, so we'll go down to our parameters here, and you can see how that's working. Okay, I want to actually reverse this. So I'll just make this white on this end and I'll make this black. And so that I can get some nice shadowing on the inside there, and I'll darken it up as it comes out. Okay. Now let's take that and we'll multiply it over the noise. So that if we were to go ahead and render this, we can get the noise and then the gradient over that. So it may just help us get a little bit of shadowing and dirt maybe in there. All right. So just keep that in mind. The composite map is going to be really useful for bringing in multiple maps and combining those together. So make sure to take advantage of that. So the next thing that we want to look at is to actually use a viewport canvas. And this is something that existed before, but in 2011 it's really been revamped, and it is really actually a very powerful painting tool here in 3ds Max. So we'll take a look at how we can start to utilize that on the cockpit, and we'll do that in the next lesson.